TrueStory Vibes warmly welcomes all our beloved listeners. We're so glad to see you again in our familiar time slot.
Today,
TrueStory Vibes brings you a brand new story, one that we hope will touch your heart and stay with you. As you listen, feel free to leave a comment sharing the quote or moment that left the deepest impression on you. Wishing you a wonderful and meaningful listening experience. Aiden Rivers woke before dawn, the cold Kansas air seeping through the thin walls of the rented room he shared with his mother. At 27 years old, he'd already weathered more hardship than most men twice his age. His days on construction crews, hauling bags of cement, setting heavy bricks, crouching in the mud, had left him strong in muscle but fragile in health. A persistent cough rattled his chest, each bout threatening to uproot his resolve. Margaret Rivers, his mother, stirred at the sound of his cough. Nearing 50, she carried the weight of both grief and hope in her gentle eyes. Since the day Aiden's father perished in a warehouse fire, she'd worked morning shifts at the diner and late nights sewing aprons for local cafes, all to keep a roof over their heads. When she entered the small kitchen, Aiden noticed the faint tremor in her hands as she placed a chipped porcelain bowl of oatmeal before him. "Eat," she urged softly. Her voice carried the tired strength of someone who refused to break. "You need your strength, honey." Aiden managed a nod, scooping the lukewarm oatmeal into his mouth. Each bite felt like swallowing grit, but he forced it down. The taste of maple syrup, scarcely more than a teaspoon's worth, reminded him of sweeter mornings years ago, before medical bills and lonely nights on cold porches had become routine. His gaze met Margaret's. "I'll be fine," he croaked, but the words lay heavy in his throat. The truth was darker. If he missed another day on the job, they'd lose the meager income that kept their electricity from being shut off. Margaret's eyes filled. "Promise me you'll see a doctor, if it gets worse." She reached out, her fingers lingering against his fevered skin. "No more excuses." He set down his spoon. "I promise." Yet even as he said it, he knew funds would run dry long before a doctor's bill would clear. By sunrise's first light, Aiden steeled himself for the drive to the construction site on the outskirts of Cedar Creek, a town of dusty roads, weathered barns, and farm families clinging to tradition. He climbed into his aged pickup, its sputtering engine a familiar alarm. As he navigated past silos and grazing cows, he traced the horizon, where golden fields met the sky. In that quiet moment, he allowed himself a rare flicker of hope, the belief that hard work might carve a path out of this struggle. At the site of the new community center, a modest brick building destined to host town meetings and youth programs, Aiden joined the crew. Thick gloves shielded his hands as he hoisted mortar, stacking bricks in methodical tiers. The rhythmic clang of trowel against metal was a steady drumbeat in his ears. Around him, veteran laborers exchanged muted greetings, oblivious to the silent battle he waged with every breath. By midday, the temperature climbed, but the wind carried a sharp chill that cut through his flannel shirt. His cough returned, fiercer this time, echoing across the worksite. He swallowed hard, warning himself not to lean on the wall for support. The foreman, Jack, broad-shouldered and no-nonsense, eyed Aiden's paling face. "You all right?" Jack called out. "Just fine," Aiden replied, though his voice cracked like dry wood. Jack frowned but moved on, busy with progress charts and lunch orders. Hours blurred into the steady cadence of labor. Scoop, smear, place. With each layer of mortar, Aiden visualized a stronger foundation, not only for the building but for his life. He thought of Margaret waiting at home, the worry etched in every wrinkle of her face. He thought of nights when the furnace barely held out the cold, and of the doctor's office he couldn't afford to enter. When the lunch whistle blew, Aiden forced himself to step away from the wall and sit on a plank. He cracked open a second-hand thermos of lukewarm soup and forced down spoonfuls, yet the nourishment felt cruelly inadequate. To his side, a coworker offered a granola bar, tattered wrapper and all. Aiden accepted with silent gratitude. Back to work he went, shouldering steel beams and hoisting bricks until the whistle finally blew for the day's end. His joints protested with sharp pangs. His breath came in ragged gasps. Still, he refused to collapse. If he did, the fragile balance that kept their little household intact would tumble. On the drive home, the sun sank behind rolling fields. Aiden peered at his reflection in the rearview mirror, pale, hollow, but determined. He thought of tomorrow's wall, tomorrow's paycheck, and tomorrow's promise to Margaret. He thought of the life he wanted to build, with her, with steadiness and dignity. Pulling into the gravel driveway, he saw Margaret waiting on the porch, shawl wrapped tightly around her shoulders. She opened her arms before he even switched off the engine. In that embrace, he felt a shelter stronger than any brick wall. The steadfast love of a mother who'd sacrificed everything. "I missed you," she whispered, pressing her cheek against his worn jacket. "Missed you too," he replied, voice thick. "I'll rest tonight. I promise." As Margaret guided him inside, Aiden took one final look out across Cedar Creek's quiet streets. The struggle was far from over, but in that moment, he carried enough resolve to lay another brick in the foundation of their future, brick by brick, promise by promise. The morning after his feverish evening at home, Aiden Rivers lay in bed listening to the creak of floorboards as his mother moved about the kitchen. He could hear the kettle's shrill whistle and Margaret's soft humming as she prepared coffee. For a moment, he wondered if he'd woken from a troubling dream. But the ache in his chest and the dull throb of his temples reminded him this was all too real. He swung his legs over the edge of the mattress and pressed his palms to the cool hardwood floor. Each movement sent a jolt up his spine, but he welcomed it, any sensation that proved he was still standing, still moving forward. As he padded down the narrow hallway, Margaret met him at the doorway, her eyes full of both relief and concern. "You look pale," she said, her voice catching. She handed him a steaming mug. "Drink this. We need to talk." Aiden accepted the cup, the bitter coffee fanning his senses awake. He followed her to the scuffed kitchen table, its surface crisscrossed with decades of memories, grocery lists, newspaper clippings, and his father's old blueprints. Margaret sat, folding her hands. "I called Dr. Becker," she began. Aiden's heart tightened. Her admission marked a turning point. "He can see you today." I told him our situation, how long this cough's been going on. A wave of gratitude surged through Aiden, but he tempered it with caution. "Mom, I can't afford the bills," he said, voice low. "We barely scrape by as it is." Margaret's expression softened, but her determination remained steel. "I'll cover it," she said. "I'll pick up extra shifts. We'll figure it out like we always do." His throat tightened. He thought of the unpaid rent, the past due utilities, the empty pill bottle beside his bed. He thought of every promise he'd broken to her in service of keeping them afloat. He realized the cycle had to end. That afternoon, Aiden visited the local library to escape the crush of worries. The granite steps and stained glass windows gave him a sense of grounding, a reminder that larger worlds existed beyond Kansas fields. He pulled a chair beneath the high-vaulted ceiling and opened his laptop to an email thread from Nolan Brooks, an old high school friend who had lured him here with tales of opportunity across the Rockies and Seattle. Nolan's words had once seemed fantastical. Work crews paying twice the Kansas rate, affordable shared housing near the Puget Sound, a community of families and dreamers building the next generation of eco-friendly developments. Aiden had responded with polite optimism, half believing it was hype. But now, ill and trapped in a loop of exhausting labor, without compensation for his health, Seattle's possibilities glowed like a distant star. He read Nolan's most recent message. "Hey, Aiden, I got an opening on a crew in Rainier Valley. Paychecks clear weekly, benefits start immediately, and housing referrals are available. You've always been strong enough for hard work. Here, your skills will actually get noticed. Think about it." Aiden stared at the screen. His fingers trembled. Could he uproot Margaret and himself? Could he abandon Cedar Creek, even temporarily, with all its familiar comforts and his mother's fragile health? He took a deep breath and clicked open a new document, typing out pros and cons. Pros. Higher wages covering living costs and medical bills. Health benefits for his chronic cough. Opportunity to send home significant support for Margaret. Chance to break the cycle of near poverty.
Cons.
Leaving his mother alone, risking her health and emotional well-being. Uncertain rental market in a big city. Losing any remaining family connections in Cedar Creek. The mental toll of starting over in unfamiliar territory. Margaret found him there when the sun dipped low, its beams fanning the piles of scribbled notes. She slid into the seat across from him. "You've been busy," she observed, glancing at the document. Aiden swallowed. "I'm thinking about Seattle." The words bristled in his chest. He watched her face for a flicker of hurt or anger. Instead, she studied him, her eyes reflecting both fear and fierce pride. "You've always been ambitious," she said quietly, "even when the world told you to settle. Seattle could be the fresh start you need." Her support hit him like a wave. All his life, he'd carried guilt for wanting something better, believing his dreams were a burden to her. Now she was urging him onward. "Promise me one thing," she said, reaching for his hand. "You go because you need a chance at health and stability, not because this place has nothing left for you."
He squeezed her hand.
"I promise." Over the next 24 hours, they crafted a plan. Margaret gathered her savings, small, but enough for Aiden's bus ticket. Aiden applied for the Seattle position, submitted his resume and references, and arranged a provisional interview via phone. He negotiated with a site foreman in Cedar Creek for a week's leave, citing a family medical matter. The foreman, accustomed to Aiden's reliability, acquiesced. The morning of his departure, Aiden packed the last of his belongings: worn jeans, his father's faded hat, essential documents in a manila folder. He filled a small cooler with leftovers Margaret insisted he take, homemade cornbread and chili that tasted like home. Margaret stood on the porch as the early bus rumbled into view. She wore her shawl, arms crossed over her heart against the morning chill. Aiden breathed deeply and hugged her tight, gathering a lifetime of strength from her embrace. "Make it work," she whispered in his ear. "But come back when you can." He nodded, tears pricking his eyes. "I will." As the bus pulled away from Cedar Creek, Aiden peered out the window at the fading silhouette of his hometown, its silos, dusty roads, and the tiny house where his mother waited. He felt the pull of nostalgia, but also a fierce determination. Ahead lay Seattle's promise of health benefits, consistent pay, and a community where his labor mattered. His cough, once a constant dagger in his side, seemed distant now, an urging toward renewal. With each mile, he shed the weight of fear and self-doubt. By the time the bus crossed into Colorado's rolling plains, Aiden Rivers resolved that, come what may, he would build a life that honored both his mother's sacrifices and his own unspent potential. The road stretched onward, uncharted yet filled with possibility. He exhaled, gripped the armrest, and leaned forward, ready to embrace whatever Seattle would bring. The first thing Aiden noticed about Seattle wasn't the skyline or the ferry traffic. It was the relentless gray drizzle that drummed against the coach bus windows as the vehicle rumbled into Rainier Valley. The city felt vast, glass towers rising out of mist, neon signs flickering through clouds. At 27, Aiden Rivers had never lived anywhere bigger than Cedar Creek, Kansas.
Now.
The lumbering bus jerked to a stop at a concrete curb outside a modest brick building emblazoned with a simple sign: Stride Forge Footwear. Aiden stepped off the bus, suitcase in one hand, cooler of cornbread in the other. Morning traffic hissed and honked as workers streamed past, umbrellas bobbing in the rain. He tucked his chin beneath the hood of his weathered jacket and crossed the street, slugging down the last of his coffee. Behind him, the bus pulled away, its taillights disappearing into the mist, their world shrinking back to Kansas. He inhaled, braced himself, and walked through the front doors of Stride Forge. The lobby was an unremarkable corridor of gray tile and fluorescent lights. A receptionist glanced up from her screen but didn't smile. Seattle was too busy for pleasantries. She nodded toward a set of double doors stamped, loading dock and shipping, and directed Aiden to the third-floor offices. On the elevator ride up, he watched construction workers in reflective vests file through, some heading to office towers, others to union halls. Each face was determined, focused, pressed by necessity, and he felt a kinship with them. On the third floor, a woman in a crisp blazer stood at the door to HR. She introduced herself as Dana Price, cross-checked his name on a clipboard, and handed him the onboarding packet, tax forms, medical enrollment options, direct deposit paperwork. Aiden's pulse sped as he scanned the pages. Medical insurance, prescription coverage, paid sick leave, benefits he'd never dared imagine. Each line felt like a lifeline thrown out to him and Margaret back home. Dana led him down a pastel hallway to a wide, open bay lined by modular workstations. The air buzzed with sewing machines and the low thrum of conveyor belts. Workers in polo shirts and protective gloves perched on rolling stools, piecing together leather panels, weaving laces, and inspecting finished soles. Aiden's eyes widened. This was a symphony of industry, each station a musician in perfect cadence. "Welcome to the Stitch Division," Dana said, motioning toward a supervisor who appeared to be mid-30s and looked every bit as focused as her team. "This is Malik Thompson. He'll show you the ropes." Malik offered a firm handshake. "Glad you're here, Rivers. We're running behind on today's quota. Let's get you set up." He led Aiden to an empty workstation. At the desk lay a pile of unfinished sneaker uppers, fine needles, spools of thread, and a sleek industrial sewing machine. A small locker overhead held a high-visibility vest and a neon green safety helmet. Aiden donned the vest and helmet, feeling the edges scratch his neck. Malik gave him a quick tour. "Stretch the leather panel under the presser foot, guide the edge along the seam guide, maintain steady pressure so the machine feeds evenly." Within minutes, Malik moved on to assist a coworker, leaving Aiden alone at the machine. His heart pounded. This was all new territory, the whir of the motor, the flash of the needle, the precise alignment of two halves into one seam. He slid his gloved hands onto the leather, closed his eyes briefly, and let muscle memory from years of laying brick inform his rhythm. His first few stitches posed a jagged line, seam puckered. He yanked the emergency release lever. The needle retracted, and the rows of imperfect loops stared back. Malik appeared again, crouched beside him. "Not bad for your first try," Malik said, squatting with elbows on knees. "Just keep light pressure. Imagine you're guiding a brick into place. Firm, deliberate. Try again." Aiden reset the panel, inhaled, and guided the leather more gently. The needle pierced cleanly. The seam tracked straight. He exhaled in relief. Malik nodded and moved on. For the next hour, Aiden stitched panel after panel, Malik periodically offering pointers. Soon, Aiden's hands moved on autopilot, the hum of the machine melding with his heartbeat. A sense of calm settled over him. This was work he could master, a skill providing not only a paycheck but pride. During a short break, coworkers drifted over. A young woman named Tasha offered him a granola bar. A man in his 50s, Rodriguez, asked if he needed help finding the restrooms. An older seamstress, Ms. Layton, tapped him on the shoulder and complimented his stitching. For the first time, Aiden felt welcomed by a workforce. No questions about his cough, no judgment about his accent, no pity. Simply respect for his willingness to learn and work. Back at the table, Malik returned with a clipboard. "Your first 8 pairs look good. Keep that pace, and you'll be at full capacity by week's end. I'll recommend you for the bonus program, attendance and quality."
Bonus.
Full capacity. Attendance. These words sat like treasure at the tip of Aiden's tongue. He stammered a thanks, thinking of Margaret, how many weeks of groceries this could buy, how many tests he could finally afford at the clinic. At lunch, the cafeteria stocked salads, soups, burritos, and hot coffee. Aiden found a table with Tasha and Rodriguez and shared the cornbread and leftover chili from his cooler. Tasha broke off a piece, trying it. "This is amazing, honestly." She wrapped the rest in napkins for later. Aiden felt a flush of pride. In Cedar Creek, homemade was common. Here, it was a special treat. Afternoon brought new challenges. operating the automated lace mill, inspecting for glue residue on midsoles, affixing labels. Each task demanded focus, but Aiden tackled them as he had the brick wall, one piece at a time. Steady pressure, eyes trained on the line ahead. By the end of the shift, his back ached less than it would have under dripping cement buckets. His cough, though still present, felt diminished by purposeful effort. When the final bell rang, Aiden clocked out and received his first paycheck stub, 8 hours at $20 an hour. He cradled it in his palm, the numbers bold and clear. Direct deposit on Fridays. Health coverage kicking in after 30 days. Paid sick leave. His chest swelled, hesitation and fear receded. He was building something here. Stability, security, the means to heal himself and support his mother. In the ride home from the light rail station, Aiden texted Margaret. First day done.
Stitch division.
Pay is real. Benefits, next month. Her reply arrived almost instantly. I'm so proud. Rest well, love you. He stared at the screen, fist tightening around the phone. For the first time in a long while, he let himself believe the fear of losing power or medicine might finally be, or soon be, behind them. That evening, rain turned to a gentle mist as Aiden climbed the stairs to a small efficiency apartment he'd rented on Beacon Hill. The view overlooked Elliott Bay's dark water, ferries slipping across like quiet ghosts. He set his cooler on the kitchenette counter and pulled out the remaining cornbread. Margaret's recipe was perfect, sweet, crumbly, and full of warmth. He ate slowly, savoring each bite, then bundled under a thin blanket and dialed home. Margaret's voice came soft through the phone. How did it go? He described the stitching, the lineup of coworkers, the cafeteria, the paycheck. They're good people, Mom. I can do this. And you will, she said. Get some rest. Tuesday is lace mill training. He smiled softly, exhaustion settling in. I will. Love you. Love you more. He ended the call and placed his phone on the nightstand. As he lay down, the distant city lights pulsed through the window, a lullaby of possibility. In that moment, Aiden understood this was more than a job. It was the foundation of a new life, one where every stitch was a promise kept, each seam a testament to endurance. And tomorrow, he would return to Stride Forge, more certain than ever that he could and would build something lasting from this fresh start. The invitation arrived on a crisp Wednesday morning, slipped silently under Aiden's apartment door in a sleek black envelope stamped with gold foil. You've been selected for an exclusive private preview. Velvet Thread Boutique invites you to a bespoke sample fitting and cocktail reception. Tonight, 7 p.m. Here we read the note, heart-skipping. Zara Knight's boutique had quickly built a reputation for artisanal craftsmanship and trend-setting style. A fitting there was both an honor and a chance to step outside the workman's boots he wore every day. He pictured how Margaret back home might beam with pride to know her son was singled out for something so refined. That evening, Aiden navigated Seattle's winding streets to Capitol Hill, the rain settling into a gentle mist. He paused before a discreet doorway draped in ivy, the boutique's name etched on a brass plaque, Velvet Thread. Drawing a deep breath, he entered. Inside, the air was warm and fragrant with sandalwood and silk. Under soft track lighting, dark wood floors glinted. Mannequins wore unhemmed sample pieces, velvet jackets in Merlot red, tailored trousers in storm gray wool. A low jazz track murmured from hidden speakers. At the far end, Zara Knight levitated atop a rosewood step, clad in a velvet blazer the color of currants. Her hair was swept back, accentuating sharp cheekbones and a slight, knowing smile. Aiden Rivers, she greeted, extending a perfectly lacquered hand. I'm delighted you could join us. He felt his pulse quicken. Thank you for the invitation. A seamstress in a charcoal smock appeared at Zara's side, tape measure draped around her neck. We'd like to begin with measurements,
she said.
Just a quick fit. Across the room, a rack of half-finished garments shimmered beneath the lights. As the seamstress guided Aiden to a velvet-draped fitting stool, Zara moved close. Her perfume a heady swirl of amber and musk. Stand naturally, the seamstress instructed, pinning fabric panels at his shoulders. Aiden felt the plush textile shift under his arms. Zara leaned in, brushing a stray lock of hair from his forehead. Broad shoulders, Zara murmured, voice so soft he almost missed it. Perfect for this cut. Aiden's cheeks warmed. The seamstress scribbled notes into a slender black notebook, then stepped back. Thank you. Please have a seat and enjoy a glass of wine while we adjust. At a small bar, a crystal decanter caught the sconce's glow. Zara poured deep red Merlot into 2 slender-stemmed glasses. A modest house blend, she said, handing him one. I find it pairs well with silk and, to kick off the evening, conversation. He raised the glass in a quiet toast. The wine was smooth, smoky, luxuriously rich. As he sipped, Zara studied him like a sculptor evaluating clay. For a lull, they spoke of artistic inspiration, how texture influenced shape, how light animated color. The seamstress drifted away, leaving them alone in the hush. When the glasses were half empty, Zara stood and guided him back to the center of the room. Close your eyes, she said softly. Heart racing, Aiden obeyed. He felt Zara's fingertips clasp around his biceps, smoothing folds of fabric. Just relax, she whispered. A faint click sounded. Zara's breath brushed his neck. Open your eyes. He blinked. Around him, the softly lit boutique looked the same, until he noticed Velvet Thread's logo embroidered on the velvet chair beside him. Capture the essence of craft. In that moment, Zara lifted her phone and panned out to record. Perfect lighting, she said, tilting the lens so the camera focused on Aiden's face, slightly flushed, startled. Hold still. We agreed no photos. Aiden stammered, voice thick with confusion. He tried to step back, but Zara's hand brushed his shoulder, anchoring him. My apologies, she said, her tone shifting from confidant to proprietor. That was for social media rehearsal, private, of course. She grinned. Your approval is assumed, given your presence. Aiden's stomach clenched. He let out a stiff nod, though his heart thundered. Zara slipped the phone into her clutch and offered him a fresh glass. Drink, she urged. It'll help you relax. He lifted the wine, the glittering glass a trap of temptation. Thank you, he muttered, voice flat. He drank. But the Merlot tasted sharper on the second swallow, a tang of something not quite wine. His chest tightened, vision dimmed. Zara pressed the glass into his hand. Finish it, she said. Aiden's knees wobbled. The seamstress reappeared suddenly, ushering Zara aside. Excuse me, Miss Knight, she whispered. Zara nodded, then turned back to Aiden. Take a seat, she instructed softly. Rest here while I step away. He sank into the velvet chair, its plush arms swallowing him. His head lolled, eyes fluttering shut. Zara's heels clicked as she vanished through a side door. Aiden's last coherent thought was a silent plea. Don't let this be a mistake. When Aiden next came to, the boutique was dark and empty. Morning light filtered through rain-speckled windows. His head throbbed, every breath a battle. He sat up too quickly and nearly toppled, clutching the armrest. No wine glass. No fabric panels. Nothing but the echo of the jazz track's final note in his mind. His phone lay on the floor. It buzzed relentlessly. He patted the carpet, found it, and saw dozens of missed calls, texts, and notifications. Stride Forge HR. Important. Please contact us at once. Harper Quinn. Are you okay? Call me immediately. Nolan Brooks. Dude, WTF is this video? Confusion morphed into dread. He tapped the top text, which opened a link. See what everyone's talking about. Hands trembling, he watched. The footage showed him in the velvet chair, eyes glazed, head tilted back, as Zara knelt beside him. Her hand brushed across his throat in a tender gesture, her lips curving in false concern. He slurred something unintelligible. She murmured sweet nonsense in return. Then the camera panned to reveal a rack of jackets and dresses behind them. Zara's voice, recorded in perfect audio. Here lies the boundary between creation and consumption. Trust the hands that shape you. The clip ended with a title card, Velvet Thread exclusive, The Art of Revelation. A wave of nausea swept Aiden. He replayed the scene, Zara's fingers tracing his skin, the condescending wink as she recorded him utterly defenseless. He realized she'd drugged his wine to capture him in that vulnerable state, for marketing, for her private archive, for something he couldn't foresee. His phone erupted in new pings. Hey man, that is messed up.
Nolan.
I can't believe she set you up. Rodriguez, coworker. Is this real? Tasha, friend. Panic and betrayal churned together. A cold breeze drifted through the open back door, sending drapes fluttering like specters. Aiden darted for the exit, nearly colliding with a tower of display boxes. He burst into the alley, gulping wet air, mind racing. That very evening, Strideforge's monthly celebration filled the warehouse cafeteria, twinkling lights, rows of snacks, co-workers in button-downs and blouses. At the center, Harper Quinn stood in a blush dress, her hand resting on Aiden's arm as they accepted applause for their upcoming wedding. Aiden forced a grin, but the marinade of fear in his chest wouldn't wash away. As the DJ cued a slideshow of employee achievements, the lights dimmed. A hush fell. Harper squeezed his hand. "What's happening?" she whispered. A bright screen flickered to life overhead. Aiden's pulse jumped when the first frames appeared. Him, slumped in the velvet chair at Velvet Thread, head bobbing, eyes glassy. Gasps rippled through the crowd. He watched, paralyzed, as the footage played, Zara's clipped garden rose voiceover echoing in the warehouse. True revelation lies in revealing your truest self. Harper's eyes widened in horror. She covered her mouth. Muffled whispers swelled. Did he cheat? What is he doing? Poor Harper. Aiden wanted to scream, to leap on stage and explain, but his voice lodged in his throat. The screen went dark.
Spotlights snapped on.
Harper turned to him, tears glistening. "I don't understand," she said, voice raw. His stomach nodded. "It's not what it looks like," he croaked. "Zara, she drugged me. It was a setup." Her gaze flickered between doubt and hurt. The applause forget slid into silence. Aiden's coworkers looked on with shock and pity. He could almost hear each doubt form into a silent verdict. Guilty. With the cafe lights glaring down, Aiden realized his life had been irreversibly altered. Velvet Thread Boutique's betrayal had detonated his future, his fiancée's trust, his reputation, and his stall at Strideforge, all threatened by one wicked scheme. And now, standing before the people he respected most, he faced a mountain of questions he wasn't sure he could ever answer. The drive back to Cedar Creek should have been familiar. Lanes of golden wheat, weathered barns, the horizon rolling out like an old friend's welcome mat. But for Aiden Rivers, every mile felt surreal. The banquet hall at Strideforge, once a place of celebration, was now a chamber of stunned silence. Gravity weighed on his spine as he navigated I-90 westbound, the taillights of bigger city SUVs blinking past in the dusk. In his pocket hovered his phone, silent but heavy with unread messages from Margaret back home. He pulled onto the gravel driveway of his childhood home just as the last light winked out. Through the dusty window panes, he saw his mother, Margaret, framed in the kitchen doorway, her shawl draped tight across her shoulders. She didn't move when he climbed from the truck. Barely a flicker of relief crossed her lined face. "Aiden," she said softly, voice hollow. Sit down." He followed her inside, every sense alert. The kitchen smelled of burnt toast and medications. Margaret led him to the dinette table, where a single chair waited. An untouched mug of tea cooled beside an open pill organizer, its compartments a rainbow of capsules and tablets. His mother's hands shook as she folded them in her lap. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. Guilt pooled in Aiden's chest. They had always protected each other. Now he sensed her suffering, unspoken yet clear as the marching grain beyond the window. "Mom, what's wrong?" His voice cracked. She drew in a shuddering breath. "The doctor called. Your place, the accident at the boutique. I got so upset. I climbed our front steps too fast, slipped on the ice. She closed her eyes. They say, I hit my head. Aiden's heart thundered. He reached across the table, taking her frail hand. Why didn't you call me? Her tears fell. I didn't want to worry you in the city. Her gaze shattered him. I drove myself to the clinic, and then the ambulance came. The world constricted. He stood abruptly, chair scraping harshly. We're going now. Margaret nodded, steadying herself. He guided her to the passenger seat, wrapping an arm around her shoulder. He sprinted back to the driver's side and tore down the driveway. The clinic's fluorescent lights squawked open before him. Aiden leapt out, helping her inside. Inside the emergency room's antiseptic haze, nurses moved swiftly. Aiden watched through a pane of frosted glass as they wheeled Margaret into a bay. A flatline monitor beeped faintly. Time stretched. He paced. The weight of guilt, being away, the scandal, everything crushed his chest. An hour later, a somber doctor in navy scrubs emerged. Aiden braced himself. Mr. Rivers? The doctor's voice was soft.
I'm Dr. Patel. I'm so sorry.
Your mother suffered an intracranial hemorrhage. We performed emergency surgery, but the bleeding was too severe. She passed a few minutes ago. Aiden's knees buckled. He pressed a hand to the wall. No, you don't understand. Panic flooded his voice. She's my mother. She can't. The doctor's expression was full of regret.
I'm truly sorry.
In that stark corridor, Aiden collapsed, grief ripping through him like lightning. Every breath he took burned. He dimly registered compassionate hands on his shoulders, the muffled hum of hospital machinery, a cleaning cart clattering in the distance. That evening, under a slate-gray sky, Cedar Creek gathered for Margaret's funeral at the little church by the river. White folding chairs lined the damp grass, each draped with a single white rose. Townspeople, farmhands in Carhartts, teachers clutching stacks of photo albums, and lifelong neighbors murmured condolences. A pall of sorrow hung heavier than the approaching rain. At the front, an oak podium held Margaret's favorite framed photograph, her bright smile beneath a Kansas sunrise, Aiden as a chubby-cheeked toddler in her arms. Next to it lay her well-worn Bible, its edges frayed from decades of Sunday services. Aiden stood nearest the coffin, dark eyes glazed. He touched the polished wood, his thumb brushing the smooth lacquer. Tears welled. He heard snippets of the minister's eulogy. She was the beating heart of this community, a quiet strength, unwavering devotion. Each phrase felt like ice seeping through his bones. When the ceremony ended, the ark steeple tolled its slow,
resounding chime.
Aiden carried the first shovel of earth, the soil cold and sodden beneath his glove. He said only 2 words, voice raw. I'm sorry. One by one, neighbors shared stories of Margaret's kindness, meals she delivered to ailing parishioners, quilts stitched for newborns, advice freely given over split-rail fences. Each tale struck Aiden anew. He'd barely grasped the breadth of her impact beyond their small home. Rain began to fall in gentle sheets as they laid her to rest. Aiden stood at the edge of the grave, head bowed, water dripping from his chin. He imagined her in the Kansas field she'd loved, the wind through wild sunflowers, the warmth of morning light on her face. He felt the cold damp on his cheeks but could no longer distinguish it from tears. In the silent drive home, Aiden stared through the windshield at the swirls of headlights on wet asphalt. The funeral pall had lifted, but nothing around him had changed. The fields extended, flat and somber, yet the house on the horizon, home, felt unreachable. He stepped inside and paused in the entryway. The hallway seemed too narrow, his breath too loud. Margaret's favorite shawl hung on the coat rack. He slipped it over his shoulders, its familiar lavender scent enveloping him. He traced a finger along its fringe, each thread a memory. Bedtime stories by the fireplace, her lullabies in that same room, her laughter echoing in the kitchen's morning light. For the first time, years of sacrifice, of loving him through his illness, of working 2 jobs so he could dream, everything Margaret had done flooded his mind. Guilt and grief pooled, each one indistinguishable from the other. He sank to the floor, shawl wrapped tight, and wept for the mother who had always been his anchor. Outside, the rain fell unceasingly, washing over Cedar Creek as though the heavens themselves mourned.
Inside,
Aiden held the shawl and promised, in that trembling moment, that he would honor her sacrifice, not with words, but with every stitch of his life to come. Aiden's pickup ambled down a familiar gravel road, the flatbed now loaded with 2 cases of bandages, antiseptic, and jars of homemade chicken broth, Margaret's last gift before she passed. Rain still clung to his windshield, and the fields beyond were sodden, blades of grass bowing beneath the weight of water. At the crest of a small hill, the faded sign read Rosewood Farm, EST 1904. Its once vibrant paint now chipped by a dozen Kansas winters. Aiden braked to a halt and sat for a moment, the engine idling beneath him, his chest tight with exhaustion and purpose. Rosewood Farm had been in the Lancaster family for 5 generations. Elliot and Clara Lancaster, friends of his mother, then mentors, had taken Margaret under their wing when Aiden was a boy. In years gone by, he'd come here after school to help mend fences, bottle feed piglets, and gather eggs before walking home in the gloaming. The farmhouse itself sat at the heart of the land. A white clapboard house with deep green shutters, a wraparound porch, and wind chimes that sang in the breeze. He killed the engine and climbed from the cab, the land's quiet washing over him. Though grief still roiled inside, he felt something else, too, a stirring sense of belonging. The Lancaster farm was more than old friend's homestead. It was a place where he'd first learned that work could heal a restless heart. The front door swung open before he could knock. Elliot stood in the threshold, his broad frame silhouetted against the warm glow of hallway lights. Clara hovered just behind him, worry etched in her eyes. "Aiden," Elliot said, voice rough with relief. He stepped forward and clasped Aiden's shoulder. "You made it back." Clara joined them, her arms sweeping around both Elliot and Aiden in a sudden, fierce hug. "Thank God," she whispered. Aiden felt her heart pounding against his chest. "We've been worried." Inside, the farmhouse smelled of pine wood polish, baking cinnamon, and Earl Grey tea. Clara guided him to the old living room. A crackling fire burned in the hearth, casting dancing shadows over family portraits, ancestors in sepia-toned frames, stern-faced men in suspenders, and women in frilly collars, all staring into eternity. Elliot placed a steaming cup of tea in Aiden's hands. "You'll need this," he said. Aiden blew across the surface, inhaling the bergamot scent. It felt grounding. Clara settled into the armchair opposite, smoothing a throw blanket over her knees. Elliot sank into the sofa, fingers drumming the armrest. For a heartbeat, none spoke. The rain pattered on the windows. Finally, Elliot exhaled. "I know why you're here." His tone carried gentle respect. "You want to help with the farm." Aiden nodded, throat tight. I need a place to be useful again. And I want to honor Margaret's memory." His eyes flicked to Clara. "She always said this place was a second home." Clara's lips trembled. "She loved you. You both loved it here." She cleared her throat. "We could use your help. The piglets are due next week, and these storms have made it hard to keep the pens dry. The machinery's been acting up. We could use an extra pair of strong hands." Aiden closed his eyes, swallowing the lump in his throat. "I'll do whatever it takes." The following morning, Aiden donned a waxed canvas jacket and sturdy boots that once trudged through mud on Cedar Creek's job sites, now scrabbling in soft Carolina loam. Elliot led him to the piggery, a long wooden structure with a slanted roof and open-air stalls. Inside, dozens of sows huddled under heat lamps, soft snuffles drifting through the pen. In a corner, 3 newborn piglets quivered, roots in their mothers' bellies, learning to find the milk bar. "You see," Elliot said, picking up a squeaky newborn and tucking it under a lamp. "The first 24 hours are critical. They can't get chilled. We lost 2 last month when that storm blew through." He nodded toward a small, drafty gap near the far wall. "Let's get that patched." Aiden fetched boards, nails, and a hammer. The stall smelled of straw, pig lanolin musk, and fresh hay. He shivered, not from cold, but from purpose. He nailed and sealed the gap, his muscles remembering the rhythm of hammering from days of framing walls. Clara appeared with a wheelbarrow of fresh shavings. "Great work, Aiden," she said, tipping the shavings inside. "That'll keep them snug." By midday, they'd rotated through feed sacks, repaired a clogged water trough, and cleaned the milking station. Aiden's cough was less persistent here. Fresh air and focused labor seemed a balm. Clara handed him a thick sandwich and an iced tea. He sat on a bale of hay and ate with honest hunger. The weight of recent weeks lifted ever so slightly with each bite. That afternoon, Elliot introduced Aiden to the fields beyond the barn, golden rows of oats and barley swaying under a clearing sky. "We're expanding this year," Elliot explained, handing over a soil probe. "Need to test pH before planting cover crops. Would you head over to Plot C and let me know what you find?" Aiden knelt, drilling the probe into black earth. The soil was rich, crumbly, fertile. He extracted the clamp of earth and handed it back. "Looks healthy, neutral pH, good nitrogen levels." He met Elliot's eyes. "We're set to plant the rye and clover." Elliot clapped him on the back. "Perfect. Couldn't do it without you." As dusk fell, Aiden trudged back to the farmhouse for supper. Roast chicken with root vegetables, warm cornbread, and Clara's apple pie for dessert. Seated at the long dining table, the three ate and shared stories of the farm's history. The day Elliot's grandfather bought the land, Clara's childhood chores, the legendary snowstorm of '62 that nearly froze the entire Midwest. Halfway through dessert, Elliot set down his fork. "Aiden," he began, voice soft, "we've been talking about making this more than just a farm. We want to launch a direct-to-consumer market, from field to table." He gestured to Clara, who smiled and produced a stack of glossy brochures. "Fresh pork, free-range eggs, seasonal vegetables, delivered to Seattle and beyond. We could use your experience with marketing. You'd be our point man." Aiden felt tears prick his eyes, tears for Margaret's pride, for the chance to create something enduring from grief. "I'd be honored," he said, voice thick. Clara reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "We're a family here, Aiden. Margaret always said so. You belong." That night, Aiden lay awake on the couch in the guest room, listening to the barn's distant symphony, hens clucking, piglets squealing, the far-off hum of a tractor's engine. Restlessness that once haunted him felt smoothed by purpose. He traced Margaret's shawl folded at the foot of the bed. She would have loved this new chapter. Her son safe, healthy, building on the traditions that sustain generations. Outside, the wind picked up again, but the farm stood strong. Its buildings freshly patched, its fields tested and mapped, its table set for a harvest yet to come. In that quiet darkness, Aiden felt the first true stirrings of hope since his world had ruptured. Rosewood Farm would not just be a place to heal, it would be the cornerstone of his and Margaret's legacy, seated in soil and love, nourished by determination and community. Tomorrow, dawn would bring another chance to labor at the hoof stalls, mend the fences, and lay the groundwork for a future that honored the woman who'd given him everything. And for the first time in weeks, Aiden Rivers was ready. The first time Harper Quinn stepped onto Rosewood Farm, she registered the scent, earthy loam mingled with hay, a trace of piglet musk, and Clara's baking cinnamon wafting from the farmhouse windows. It was early afternoon when her Uber pulled up the dusty lane, the digital meter showing a far steeper fare than her paycheck at Stride Forge normally allowed. She sat for a moment in the back seat, gathering her courage, rehearsing the apologies she'd written off and on for weeks. When the driver announced their arrival, Harper stepped out, pressing a hand to her chest as she surveyed the rolling fields and whitewashed barn that looked so foreign and yet so central to Aiden's world. She zipped her wool coat against the creeping autumn chill and made her way to the front door, where Clara Rivers, Margaret's lifelong friend, stood waiting, concern etched into her gentle features. "You came," Clara said, embracing Harper with surprising warmth. Harper's throat tightened. "I had to," she whispered. I need to say I'm sorry." Clara led her inside, through a cozy living room dominated by a stone fireplace. Elliot Rivers, Aiden's adoptive father, bent low to refill firewood. He glanced up, surprise flickering in his eyes, but nodded silently and returned to his task. Harper perched on a cushioned bench by the hearth. Clara bustled to the kitchen, returning with mugs of hot cider spiced with clove and orange peel. Harper cradled the cup, inhaling its comforting warmth. She closed her eyes, summoning courage. Footsteps sounded in the hallway. Into the doorway stepped Aiden Rivers, hands rough, jeans streaked with soil, his denim jacket bearing the Rosewood Farm patch. His face went still as he saw her. They held each other's gaze. His eyes, once lit with anticipation for their wedding, now shadowed with cautious disbelief. Harper stood and approached, her heart pounding. "Aiden," she began, voice catching. "Thank you for seeing me." He waited, arms folded loosely, as though braced for another blow. She drew a breath. "I watched that video at Stride Forge. I saw what appeared to be you and Zara." Her voice cracked. Part of me believed it. Hurt ran so deep. But another part, she swallowed, always wondered why you never fought back, why you never contacted me. You were silent. Aiden's jaw tightened. He set aside the half-empty cider, took a careful step forward, then stopped. "I thought I was too ashamed. I thought you'd never believe me. Everyone saw it. My coworkers whispered. Even Nolan." I could almost hear the doubt in his texts. He exhaled, the breath shaky. "I wanted to call you, to explain, but every time my phone buzzed, I panicked. Seeing your name, I didn't know what to say." Harper's eyes glistened. "I felt betrayed," she confessed. "I imagined the worst, you cheating, wanting something else. That image was seared into my mind." He closed the gap between them, placing a tentative hand on her arm. "Please believe me, I never." She raised a hand. "Let me finish." She stepped back. "After I left the banquet hall, I confronted Nolan. He told me he'd called you, left messages, and you never replied. I thought you didn't care." She choked up. Aiden took a breath, voice soft. "I couldn't face the humiliation. I felt trapped between proving my innocence and admitting I'd been manipulated. I didn't trust Zara's apology either, once she'd drugged me. Who knew what her motives were?" Harper's shoulders shook. "I'm sorry for doubting you," she whispered. "I'm sorry for believing what I saw instead of listening to my heart." She brushed tears away. Aiden reached out, gently wiping a tear from her cheek. "I forgive you," he said quietly. "But Harper, I forgive you because I love you. And I believe we can rebuild trust if you'll let me." She swallowed, nodding slowly. "I want to believe you." He offered his hand. She took it, and in that simple touch, a spark reignited. They moved to sit on the stone hearth bench together, shoulders touching for the first time in weeks. Outside, Clara and Elliot exchanged a hopeful glance. Over the next hour, they spoke quietly, filling empty spaces left by weeks of silence. Harper asked about life at Rosewood Farm. The piglets, the soil tests, the launch of the direct market plan. Aiden listened, pride shining in his eyes as he recounted successes, challenges overcome. With each story, Harper saw him not as the broken figure from the video, but as the man she fell in love with. Resilient, compassionate, determined. Then it was her turn. She described the fear and confusion after she'd confronted Zara alone, the late-night research that revealed Velvet Thread's record of lawsuits against other influencers, the phone calls to lawyers, the private investigators she'd hired at her own expense to prove Aiden's innocence. She admitted she'd been terrified of losing him, not to another woman, but to despair. When she finished, Aiden pulled her into a gentle hug. "Thank you," he whispered, "for fighting for us." She lifted her head, eyes wet but luminous. "I'll always fight for us." They sealed their reconciliation with a tentative kiss, soft, careful, but charged with relief. As they parted, Harper rested her forehead against his. "I missed you," she murmured. Aiden pressed his lips to her temple. "I missed you more." Later at the dinner table, the three adults gathered. A spread of roast pork, Rosewood Farm's signature offering, occupied the center. Apple garlic, glazed tenderloin, buttery mashed potatoes, seasonal roasted squash. Clara and Elliot beamed as Aiden and Harper joined them, hands clasped under the table. To Harper's delight, they served farm-fresh eggs baked into a golden quiche, and Margaret's old recipe for peach cobbler, hot from the oven. Clara quipped that Margaret would have been proud to see them together again. Elliot raised his glass of local cider. "To reconciliation," he said, and they all echoed the toast. Harper locked eyes with Aiden, gratitude shining in her gaze. When dinner thinned into quiet conversation, plans for the direct market launch, logistics for shipping to Seattle, ideas for a farm-to-table dinner series, Harper and Aiden found a moment alone on the wraparound porch. The wind chimes sang in the starlit breeze. "I love how this place feels alive," Harper said, leaning into him. "Your dream, your mother's dream, it's all so tangible here." He wrapped an arm around her shoulders. "Margaret believed in community. She'd have loved to see you here." He brushed a kiss across her hair. "I want us to build something together. Our life, this farm, even that podcast you mentioned." She smiled, eyes bright. "Harvest Horizon 2.0.
He winked.
Exactly. They stood in companionable silence, watching the Milky Way stretch across the Kansas sky above Rosewood Farm. In the gentle night, they felt the threads of their relationship rewoven stronger than before, fashioned from trust, forgiveness, and the shared purpose of nurturing both land and love. Spring unfurled across Rosewood Farm like a promise redeemed. The marshy fields where Aiden Rivers had first waited to repair a leaky trough now flushed with green shoots of clover and rye, their sweet fragrances drifting on gentle breezes. The barn's newly sealed windows gleamed under the sun, the pigsties snug against any lingering chills. In every corner of the farm, life pulsed with steady rhythm, and at its heart, Aiden and Harper stood side by side, ready to nurture both land and love into full bloom. It was early May when the first direct-to-consumer orders arrived. Aiden sat at a rough-hewn pine desk inside the refurbished tack room, the walls now lined with shelves of branded jars and boxes. Fresh rosewood pork, Meadow's Edge eggs, Hearth and Harvest seasonal vegetables. The soft hum of a vintage printer provided background music as each label slid silently onto cardboard cartons. He watched the little digital screen register each confirmed sale: Seattle, Portland, Tacoma, even as far as San Francisco. Harper slipped in behind him, leaning over his shoulder to read the latest orders. "We've already sold out of our first batch of pasture-raised bacon," she said, eyes bright. "And look at this, 20 orders for our new spring vegetable medley, all shipping out Monday." Aiden turned in his chair and smiled, reaching for her hand. "We did it." His voice quivered with unspent emotion. "Mom would be proud." Harper squeezed his palm. "She is." Together, they stepped outside into golden afternoon light. The farmhouse porch overlooked fields dancing with wildflowers. Clara Rivers lounged in a rocking chair, embroidering Margaret's favorite Bible verse into a decorative pillow. Elliot Lancaster leaned against the fence post, surveying the land with a satisfied nod. "Looks like our Reconciliation Festival is set for next weekend," Harper called across the yard, referring to the annual farm event they'd reimagined as both spring fair and family reunion. "We have local artisans, a pig roast, and a booth for Harvest Horizon." Elliot straightened, wiping his rough hands on his jeans. "You two have turned this place around. Rosewood hasn't felt this alive in decades." Clara beamed. "And Margaret's portrait will hang by the barn door, so everyone remembers why we come together." That evening, as the sun dipped low in a crimson haze, Aiden and Harper walked hand in hand through the fields. Wild lupins nodded in their path. A symphony of birdsong filled the air. They paused at the little wooden bridge over the creek, where, as children, Aiden had fished and Harper had caught her first crawdad. Harper leaned into Aiden's side. "Do you remember the night we first met?" she asked, eyes fixed on their reflections in the creek's calm water. Aiden chuckled, ruffling her hair. "At Stride Forge's launch party. I'd just broken in sewing machines all day, and you showed up in that electric blue dress." She laughed, warm and bright. "I couldn't stop staring at your hands. They were calloused, scarred even, but so sure as they clicked through the stitches." He wrapped an arm around her. "You saw me, not the video Zara tried to sell." She looked up, her gaze steady. "I saw you then, I see you now, and I'll see you always." He pressed a kiss to her forehead. "And I love you for that." They lingered until twilight deepened, the stars unfurling overhead. As fireflies blinked to life in the grass, they walked back to the farmhouse, ready to face the future they had fought so hard to reclaim. The festival of renewal dawned clear and bright. Long tables of handcrafted wares lined the barnyard, local honey in glass jars, hand-forged silver pendants, small batch preserves. Children chased each other around clusters of hay bales while farmers in overalls competed in a tractor-pulling contest. Strings of lanterns sparkled overhead, promising warmth once dusk returned. At the center of it all stood Harvest Horizon's booth, a simple canopy adorned with sunflowers and burlap banners. Beneath it, Harper manned a laptop inviting visitors to subscribe to their weekly video series, farm tours, cooking demos, interviews with local beekeepers. Aiden stood beside her, carving thick slices of applewood smoked bacon samples onto toothpicks, offering them with a proud smile. Lines formed quickly, visitors eager to taste the fruits of their labor, to share in the farm-to-table dream that had sprung from Cedar Creek and blossomed across the Puget Sound. A grandmother from Tacoma munched appreciatively and nodded. "Best bacon I've ever had." Aiden beamed. "Thank you. It's all pasture-raised, here on the farm." A young couple from Portland asked questions about CSA subscriptions, wondering if seasonal vegetables could be included. Harper's eyes lit up as she rattled off the possibilities: spring ramps and radishes now, summer tomatoes and zucchini next, fall root veg to follow. The day rolled along in a warm rush of laughter, chatter, and the scent of fresh pies cooling on windowsills. Elliot captained a pig roast behind the barn, lifting roasted shoulders from the coals with a grin, while Clara presided over a baking contest in the farmhouse kitchen, tasting each entry with reverent care. When the sun began its slow descent, the community gathered in a circle around a large bonfire stacked with driftwood and pallets. The fire blazed, sending sparks dancing skyward. Aiden and Harper faced their friends, neighbors, and customers, faces they now counted as extended family. Elliot raised a glass of local cider. "To Rosewood Farm, may it thrive for generations as it has under your care." Clara took the toast. "And to Margaret Rivers, whose love and kindness inspired this reunion." Harper was next. She clutched Aiden's hand. "To second chances, to forgiveness, and to the future we build together." When Aiden raised his glass, his heart swelled. "To our family," he said. "Here, on this land, we stand stronger than any storm because we hold each other up." Glasses clinked. Firelight danced across smiling faces. In that moment, every fracture had been mended, between Aiden and Harper, between Aiden and his chosen family at the farm, even between the past betrayals and the bright horizon ahead. Over the following months, Harvest Horizon's subscriber base soared. Their weekly videos, Harper's warm narration over Aiden's steady camera work, showed viewers everything from the morning herd release to behind-the-scenes sausage-carrying tutorials. Recipes for seasonal jams, interviews with neighboring Vintons, and heartfelt stories of Margaret's generosity dotted the channel's evolving tapestry.
Sponsors approached.
A local cheesemaker offering to supply farmstead cheese, an eco-friendly packaging company. Even Stride Forge reaching out to collaborate on a limited edition farm workers boot, using leather sourced from Rosewood. Aiden received an unexpected message from Nolan Brooks, now living in Seattle proper. Nolan had watched every episode and was planning a podcast tour, from work boots to wheat fields, spotlighting veterans of industry who'd found new paths. Nolan invited Aiden and Harper to join him on stage at the Seattle Public Library. Aiden hesitated, speaking to hundreds, facing cameras once more, but Harper squeezed his hand. "You have their stories to tell," she reminded him. "Let's share the farm story. The heartbreak, the healing, and the harvest." So in late autumn, they took the library stage under bright lights. A hushed crowd filled the seats. Nolan introduced them. From a Kansas farm kid to a Seattle stitching savant to a Kansas farmer again, this is Aiden Rivers and his partner, Harper Quinn. Let's hear their journey. Aiden spoke with quiet confidence of betrayal at Velvet Thread Boutique, of family tragedy, of return to Rosewood's welcoming fields, and of love's redemption. Harper followed, describing the channel's mission to connect urban and rural communities, one taste at a time. Together they shared a dozen photos, Margaret's shawl knit across the lamppost. The first piglets saved by Aiden's repairs, the couple under the Milky Way on the farm's back bridge. As Harper concluded, tears glistened in her eyes. The audience responded with a standing ovation, the echo bouncing off the high ceilings. Backstage, Nolan clapped Aiden on the shoulder. "You did it, man." Harper embraced him. "I'm so proud." Aiden held both their hands, gratitude overflowing. "We did it. Together." Winter settled gently over Rosewood Farm. The fields lay blanketed in white, the barn's silhouette etched against steel skies. Yet inside, warmth thrummed, the hearth fire, laughter around long tables, the promise of spring already whispered beneath frozen soil. Aiden and Harper prepared for their first farm-to-table dinner season. Friends and customers would dine under canvas tents, tasting open fire-roasted pork, vegetables crisp from the garden, and desserts inspired by Margaret's recipes. One cold night, Harper found Aiden in the barn loft, strapping a length of twinkle lights to exposed beams. Dust motes danced in the bulb's glow. "Need a hand?" she asked. He grinned. "Always." They worked side by side, sharing quiet banter. The space transformed into something magical, strings of light overhead, long family-style tables set with mason jar centerpieces. Menus printed on craft paper tied with twine. Against the frost-laced windows, the barn glowed with anticipation. When the final bulb clicked on, bathing them in soft radiance, Harper turned and hugged Aiden close. "We did it," she whispered. Aiden placed his cheek against her hair. "We did." He thought of every step that led here, the early mornings hauling mortar, the heartbreak at Velvet Thread, his mother's fragile courage in grief, the healing found in shared toil. Through it all, he discovered that underscore home was not a single place, but a tapestry woven of love, forgiveness, and perseverance. Margaret's voice echoed in his memory, an unspoken benediction carried by the wind. "This land will heal you, if you let it." She was gone. But in every sunrise over the clover fields, every basket of fresh eggs, every subscriber's heartfelt comment, her legacy thrived. As the first guests arrived for the winter harvest dinner, Aiden stepped to the barn doors and opened them wide. Cool air rushed in, carrying laughter and the tang of cedar smoke from the outdoor hearth. With Harper at his side, he welcomed each neighbor, friend, and stranger, inviting them to share in the warmth of Rosewood Farm. Inside, under the canopy of lights and initials carved in barn lumber, M+E, 1954. One read, "A tribute to Rosewood's origin story." They dined and toasted to renewal. Plates passed, wine flowed, and conversations wove seamlessly between past and future. The orchestra of clinking glasses and stoked embers formed a symphony of community reborn. Late that night, as the last of the embers faded to glowing coals, Aiden and Harper stood hand in hand in the silent barn. They'd finally fulfilled the promise, to each other, to Margaret's memory, and to the land that cradled their dreams. Aiden turned to her, eyes soft in the lamplight. "Thank you," he said, "for believing, for staying." Harper smiled, warmth bright as any fire. "Thank you for never giving up." They sealed the moment with a gentle kiss beneath the barn's ancient rafters, two souls reconciled, two hearts tethered to a farm that held them safe. Outside, a late January wind whispered through the wheat stubble, and inside Rosewood Farm, the light endured, steadfast, unbroken, carrying them forward into every season yet to come. And that brings us to the end of today's story on TrueStory Vibes. Don't forget to leave a comment with a quote or moment that touched you the most. Your words give our team the motivation to keep creating more heartfelt stories. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you again soon.